I stood in front of the airline check-in counter, gripping the printed proof of a $21,500 bank transfer in my pocket, when my own son whispered coldly, "Sorry, Dad. Your ticket wasn't purchased. You should just go home." Behind him, the rest of the family waved cheerfully while dragging their suitcases toward the boarding gate. But before the story begins, please write in the comments section where you're watching this story from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so the Stories with Meaning channel can continue to grow and bring you even more powerful stories. My name is Henry Williams, 68 years old, widower, a retired civil engineer who spent 35 years building bridges and highways across California. My house is in the hills of Berkeley, inherited from my late wife, Margaret Williams. The house is large, too large for one man, but I never once considered selling it. Every corner still holds Margaret's laughter, the scent of her cooking, and a warmth no amount of money could ever replace. Margaret passed away 4 years ago. Diabetes complications, followed by heart failure. The doctors said she had lived longer than expected, but for me, no amount of time with her would ever have been enough. After she was gone, I lost my sense of direction. My children rarely visited. My grandchildren were busy with school. I understood. That's life. So I never complained. I lived quietly, praying every morning, reading my Bible, chatting with neighbors, occasionally transferring allowance money to my grandchildren through online banking. After last Easter, I suggested something different. During dinner at my eldest son's house, I said, "How about we take a family vacation to Hawaii? It's been a long time since we traveled together. Grandpa wants to take Emily and Noah to see the ocean." My grandchildren's eyes lit up immediately. 7-year-old Emily jumped and shouted, "Yay, we're going to Hawaii!" 5-year-old Noah clapped excitedly, even though he probably didn't really know where Hawaii was. Daniel smiled broadly. He patted my shoulder and said, "That's a great idea, Dad. It's been ages since we had a family trip. Just transfer the money to me. I'll handle all the bookings. Easier if one person takes care of everything." I nodded. Daniel always looked capable and organized. He worked in a consulting firm, constantly presenting to major clients. I trusted him completely. The trip was planned for 7 people. Daniel, his wife Rachel, Emily, Noah, my sister-in-law Linda, Rachel's father Robert, and me. 3 weeks before departure, Daniel called. "Dad, please transfer the money to my account. Total comes to about $21,500. Flights, 5 nights at the resort, meals, and car rental. Easier to manage everything from one account." The next morning, I went to the bank. That money came from my pension savings, years of hard work, the last major project before retirement. I transferred it without hesitation. This was for family. This was for my grandchildren. Daniel never sent me booking confirmations. I didn't ask. He was my son. Why would I doubt him? As departure day approached, I prepared carefully. I bought new beach sandals, replaced my old reading glasses, set aside $2,000 cash for souvenirs for neighbors and friends at church. Every night, I imagined teaching Emily and Noah how to swim, just like I once taught Daniel. The day finally arrived. I woke at 3 a.m., prayed longer than usual, asked God for a safe journey, good health, and for this trip to fill the emptiness Margaret had left behind. After dawn, I dressed in my favorite white shirt and waited on the porch with my small suitcase. The shuttle arrived at 5 a.m. Inside the van, Emily sat on my lap talking excitedly about dolphins. Noah played games on his tablet. Rachel and Linda chatted about hotel breakfasts. Daniel sat in front, frequently checking his phone. I felt happy. This togetherness was what I had been missing. The drive to Los Angeles International Airport took about 3 hours. The terminal was crowded. Announcements echoed. People rushed past with rolling suitcases. Daniel led us to the airline counter. As we approached, I noticed he looked nervous, checking his phone repeatedly. When our turn came, the agent asked for IDs and booking codes. Daniel handed over his documents. The agent frowned. "Sir, I only see 6 passengers under this reservation." My heart skipped. 6? There were supposed to be 7. Daniel pulled me aside, pale-faced. "Dad, I'm really sorry. Your ticket wasn't booked." I stood frozen. Rachel stepped in, smiling thinly. "Please don't be upset. Maybe you can fly tomorrow. We're about to miss boarding." No regret, only fear of missing the flight. I asked the agent if there were any seats left. "Only 1 seat tomorrow in business class. Price is about $4,800. They didn't wait. Daniel waved briefly. Rachel pulled the children along. Emily and Noah didn't even get to say goodbye. Suitcases rolled toward the gate. I stood alone. Later that evening, I returned to my empty house. The lights were still on. 2 cups were untouched on the table. No voices, no one waiting. That night, I sat in silence, staring at family photos. Wedding pictures, Daniel's graduation, my grandchildren smiling last Christmas. I lit a candle in front of Margaret's photo. "Margaret," I whispered, "I don't understand how this happened." There was no answer, only the flickering flame. I had printed proof of the $21,500 bank transfer, complete in every detail. Everything was there, everything, except my plane ticket. That was when I finally began to think clearly. If my ticket had never existed, then this trip had never included me from the very beginning. Daniel had booked the tickets 2 months earlier, before I even transferred the money, which meant he knew, Rachel knew, they all knew. Then something else came back to me. A year ago, Daniel had asked me to sign several documents. He said they were for renewing the vehicle registration. I signed without reading. I trusted him. But now that trust had cracked. I went back to the old filing drawer in my study. There, I found copies of the documents I had signed. They were not vehicle registration papers. They were a power of attorney allowing him to sell my old motorcycle, a Yamaha RX King, my pride and joy, which I had kept for over 20 years. The motorcycle had been sold without my knowledge. I never received the money. My head began to ache. I sat down and pulled out old bank books, starting to calculate everything I had ever given Daniel. $6,200 as a down payment for his house in Berkeley Hills 5 years ago. $1,400 for Emily's private elementary school tuition. $1,900 as startup capital for Rachel's small dental clinic that never truly operated. $850 for major car repairs, plus $700 monthly for 7 months when Daniel was unemployed. The total exceeded $16,000, and that didn't even include the $21,500 vacation money. None of it was ever returned, not once, not even a sincere thank you, only sweet promises that were never kept. Then my phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mr. Williams. This is Ocean Crest Resort, Hawaii. We're calling to confirm the reservation under Daniel Williams from August 23rd to 28th. Would you like to make any changes?" I paused, then calmly said, "Yes, I want to cancel everything." The staff sounded confused. "All reservations, sir? There will be a $300 cancellation fee." "That's fine," I replied. "Cancel it." When I ended the call, something shifted in my chest. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. I would not stay silent. I would not let them think I was weak. That afternoon, I contacted Martin Cole, the estate attorney who had handled our property paperwork while Margaret was still alive. He was a trusted friend. "Martin, I need to talk about my will." "When do you want to meet, Henry?" "Tomorrow morning." The next day, I went to his office in downtown Berkeley. It was small but immaculate. Certificates lined the walls. Martin greeted me with a warm hug. "Henry, it's been too long. You look thinner." I smiled bitterly. "I'm healthy, just dealing with family trouble." I told him everything, from the failed vacation to the missing money to the betrayal. He listened carefully. After I finished, he exhaled deeply. "This is serious, when your own child does this. But you should know, Henry, you have full legal control over your assets. If you want, we can revise your will completely." I nodded. That's exactly what I want. I didn't want Daniel to receive anything. For 3 hours we worked. I decided my Berkeley house would go to Bright Futures for Street Children Foundation, an organization Margaret once supported. My land in Napa Valley would fund a civil engineering scholarship at a Caltech-style institute under Margaret Williams' name. My remaining pension would be donated to Silver Haven Senior Home. Every asset, every dollar, none would go to Daniel. 2 witnesses signed. Everything was airtight. Then I asked Martin to contact an old colleague, a former federal investigator. His name was Brian Thompson. 3 days later, Brian called. "Henry, I've traced the transactions. Of the $21,500 you transferred, only $12,000 was used for flights and hotel bookings. $6,000 went into Rachel's personal account for loan payments. $1,800 was spent on a new smartphone and a smart TV. The rest, unaccounted for." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the back porch under a full moon. I remembered Margaret's words years ago. "Henry, you're too kind. One day someone will take advantage of that." I used to laugh. I believed kindness would never be betrayed by family. I was wrong. Then I found it. An old handwritten note Rachel had left behind 2 months earlier during a family meeting. Meeting notes, Linda's house. Written clearly. "If Dad comes along, it'll be exhausting. Better to book for 6 only." Exhausting. Me, the man who raised Daniel, paid his education, bought his house? I was exhausting? That was when I remembered something else. 2 years ago, for Daniel's birthday, I had given him a classic wall clock. Inside it, I had installed a small hidden camera. Not out of suspicion, but curiosity. I wanted to know how they lived when I wasn't around, whether my grandchildren were happy. The camera was still active. I opened the cloud storage. June 23rd. There they were, Daniel, Rachel, Linda, and Robert, sitting around the dining table. I turned up the volume. Daniel's voice was clear. "If Dad comes along, we won't be free. It'll be tiring. Let him stay home, he's old anyway." Rachel laughed softly. "Just pretend we forgot his ticket. Who wants to vacation with a half-stroke old man?" Stroke? I never had a stroke. I replayed the video again and again and again. This was no longer about money. This was about dignity, about respect. That morning, I made my final decision. I would document everything, every dollar, every lie, every broken promise, and I would never let my silence protect their cruelty again. What I didn't know back then was that the private school also offered a scholarship program. Students could receive up to 50% tuition assistance. But Daniel never told me that. There was also the monthly neighborhood association contribution I covered when Daniel claimed he was unemployed. $210 per month for 7 months, totaling $1,470. At the time, Daniel said he had been laid off and was searching for a new job. I couldn't bear the thought of my grandchildren lacking anything, so I sent the money every month. Later, I found out from Daniel's neighbors that he had not been laid off. He had resigned voluntarily after clashing with his supervisor. He even took on freelance work with decent pay, but never told me. I recalculated everything. Over the past 6 years alone, the financial support I had given exceeded $16,000, and that did not include the recent $21,500 vacation transfer. In total, nearly $38,000. My retirement savings, money that should have guaranteed a peaceful old age, was now down to barely 1/4 of what it once was. I closed my notebook and stared at Margaret's photo on the wall. "Margaret," I whispered, "you always said I was too kind. Now I finally understand what you meant." My voice cracked. My eyes burned, but I held it in. This was not the time to cry. This was the time to act. I remembered Rachel's words from the hidden camera recording. She had said, "He had a mild stroke." I stood up and paced the living room deliberately, walking back and forth, steady and firm, to remind myself that I was still strong. My legs were solid, my mind was clear. I needed no cane, no assistance to eat, bathe, or think. Yet in their eyes, I was already a burden, someone to be discarded. That afternoon, I returned to Martin Cole's office, carrying every piece of evidence I had gathered. Martin read through the documents one by one, occasionally shaking his head. "Henry," he said quietly, "this qualifies as financial manipulation. If you want, we can take this to court." I shook my head. "Not yet, Martin. I want them to know first. I want them to feel what I felt." He nodded in understanding. "All right, then let's finalize the will. Everything is ready. You'll need to sign in front of witnesses and a physician." "A doctor?" I asked. "Yes," Martin explained, "to certify that you're mentally and physically sound while making this will. That way, no one can challenge it later by claiming you were coerced or senile." The next day, I visited my regular physician, Dr. Michael Harris. He was a kind, attentive doctor who often took time to talk with elderly patients. I explained why I was there. He conducted a full examination: blood pressure, blood sugar, basic memory tests, reflex checks. All results were normal. He wrote and signed an official medical statement. "Mr. Henry Williams is in excellent physical and mental condition. There are no indications of stroke or cognitive impairment." With that letter, I returned to Martin's office. This time, the will signing was conducted formally. Present were Martin Cole, primary estate attorney; Susan Reed, his legal secretary, as witness; Jonathan Price, a junior attorney; Dr. Michael Harris, attending physician. I read the will aloud, clearly and firmly. "I, Henry Williams, being of sound mind and body, declare that upon my death all my assets shall be distributed as follows. My Berkeley residence will be transferred to Bright Futures for Street Children Foundation. My Napa Valley land will fund a civil engineering scholarship at a Caltech-style institute under Margaret Williams' name. My remaining pension will go to Silver Haven Senior Home. My life insurance policy will be allocated to the construction of a community prayer center in my hometown. All assets, without exception, shall not be inherited by Daniel Williams or any of his descendants." The room was silent. Documents were typed, printed, signed, sealed, and stamped. One for me, one for Martin, one registered with a third-party legal custodian. Everything was legally airtight. I also instructed Martin to register the will with the National Estate Registry System, ensuring that any attempt at forgery would be immediately flagged. Martin looked at me carefully. "You're absolutely serious." I met his gaze. They started this. A few days later, Brian Thompson contacted me again, this time with shocking new information. "Henry," he said, "I uncovered additional data. Daniel once received $1,400 from a local community mosque social fund. The funds were never reported or accounted for. I strongly suspect personal misuse." My blood boiled. Not only had he stolen from me, he had also misused charitable funds. "Brian," I said, "gather everything. I want to know how deep this goes." A week later, Brian came to my house with a laptop and flash drive. He showed me suspicious transactions. Incoming transfer from the mosque's account, outgoing transfers to Rachel's personal account, credit card payments. Not a single dollar used for social programs. "This alone is enough for a criminal report," Brian said. "Misuse of charitable funds carries serious penalties." I shook my head slowly. "Not yet. I want them to see the truth first." Then Brian revealed even worse. Daniel used a bank account under Emily's name, your underage granddaughter, to move large sums of money. That's illegal. Minor accounts cannot be used for financial manipulation. This can be reported to the Financial Regulatory Authority. I felt numb. How far had my son fallen? That night, I sat alone on the back porch under a clear, star-filled sky. I reviewed more footage from the hidden camera. One conversation stole my breath. Rachel said, "If Dad gives more money, don't tell your siblings. They'll get jealous. Let's just enjoy it ourselves." Daniel laughed. "Dad's easy. Just say it's for the kids. He'll always give." I wasn't a father to them. I was a walking ATM. Then I found something else. A small handwritten note left by Margaret before she passed. "Henry, if I'm gone one day, don't obey the children blindly. They must learn independence. Don't give them everything they ask for." She had warned me. I hadn't listened. I wrote a letter to myself, a message for the future. If they come after reading this, do not open the door. If they cry and apologize, remember everything. If they say it's for the grandchildren, remember they used the grandchildren's names to steal. Do not weaken. Do not surrender. I sealed the letter and placed it inside the drawer with my will. The next morning, Rachel sent me WhatsApp photos of their vacation in Hawaii. Emily and Noah playing on the beach, Daniel snorkeling, Rachel posing in front of a temple. Caption: "Amazing vacation. Everything went smoothly. No thank you, no sorry you couldn't come." As if I had never existed. I didn't reply. I turned off my phone. Enough. They thought I would remain silent. They were wrong. They would return from vacation smiling, dragging suitcases, carrying souvenirs, unaware that I was waiting not with open arms, but with legal documents and buried truths.
"Grandpa!" a voice screamed as someone hugged my waist tightly. Little Ethan ran after her, clinging to my leg with all his strength. I hugged them both gently. None of this was their fault. They were just children, innocent, unaware of anything. I softly stroked Elisa's head. "How was the vacation, sweetheart?" Elisa answered enthusiastically, eyes sparkling. It was so fun, Grandpa. We swam all the time, played in the sand, and Daddy bought me a turtle doll. Behind them, Daniel Williams suddenly stopped walking. The moment he saw me standing there, his face changed completely. Shock. Panic. Rachel Williams, walking beside him, also froze, staring at me in confusion. Robert Parker and Linda Parker stopped as well, exchanging a brief glance before slowly approaching. Daniel tried to smile, but it was stiff, forced. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He tried to sound casual, but I knew he was panicking. I didn't answer. I simply nodded toward Martin Cole, who was standing beside me. Martin stepped forward and handed Daniel a sealed envelope. "Good afternoon," Martin said, his voice formal, cold, and firm. "My name is Martin Cole, licensed estate attorney. This is a certified copy of the most recent will of Mr. Henry Williams, effective as of August 29th. Please read it carefully." There was no room for negotiation in his tone. Daniel accepted the envelope with trembling hands. He glanced at me briefly, then hastily tore it open. Rachel stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. Their faces slowly drained of color. I saw Rachel bite her lower lip. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. Daniel read quickly, then suddenly stopped at one particular section. His eyes widened. He looked at me with a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite define: anger, shock, fear, all tangled together. "Dad, what does this mean?" His voice started to shake. I looked at him calmly. "It means exactly what it says, Daniel. None of my assets go to you. Everything has been transferred to scholarship foundations and senior care homes. You get nothing." Rachel reacted immediately. "Dad, this can still be discussed, right?" Her voice rose, though she tried to stay polite. "It can't be just because of one problem that you go this far." I answered flatly. "One problem? Being abandoned at an airport is just one problem? The $22,000 that disappeared is just one problem?" Robert Parker stepped forward, raising his hands as if to calm the situation. "Henry, this is a family matter. It's not good to air it out in public like this. People are watching." I stared at him sharply. "That's exactly what I thought too, Robert. Family matters should be handled within the family. But your son didn't think that way when he left me alone at this airport a week ago." People around us had begun to stare. Some stopped, curious about the heated conversation. I didn't care anymore. My dignity had already been trampled. Now it was my turn to speak. Daniel finally lost his temper. He threw the suitcase he was holding. It hit the floor with a loud thud. His voice rose sharply. "Dad, this is too much. This money was for the kids, not for us. What about Elisa and Ethan when you're gone? They're still so young." I smiled bitterly. Precisely because they're young, I don't want them learning from parents who lie and steal other people's money. Rachel started crying. Tears streamed down her face. Strangely, I felt nothing. "Dad, if you were angry, you should have said something earlier. Not do this. Making a will like this? It's too extreme." I looked at her deeply. "Rachel, you said I should have spoken earlier. Fine, let me ask you something. When you and Daniel had a meeting at Linda Parker's house 2 months ago, when you said I was a burden and shouldn't come, did you say that to my face? When you told people I'd had a mild stroke even though I was perfectly healthy, did you tell me that?" Rachel froze. Her face went pale. Daniel stared at me with eyes wide. "Dad, how do you know that?" I took my phone from my pocket and opened a video file. I played the recording of their conversation at Daniel's house. Daniel's voice echoed clearly from the speaker. "If Dad comes to Hawaii, none of us will be free. It'll be exhausting. Just leave him at home." Then Rachel's voice. "We'll just pretend we forgot to book his ticket." I stopped the video. Silence fell. Daniel couldn't speak. Rachel lowered her head, covering her face with her hands. Linda Parker finally spoke, her voice soft.
Henry, that was just casual talk. It wasn't meant to actually happen. I looked at her coldly. Not meant to happen? Then why wasn't my ticket in the system? Why did you only book for 6 people, 2 months before I transferred the money? This wasn't casual talk, Linda. This was a plan, a carefully constructed plan to get rid of me. Martin Cole spoke again. I'd also like to add, based on our financial investigation, the $22,000 Mr. Williams transferred, only $12,000 was actually used for the vacation. The remaining funds were transferred into a personal account under Rachel Williams's name, used for loan payments and electronic purchases. This is no longer about plane tickets. This is about breach of trust and financial abuse. Rachel immediately protested. That money was still for family needs, not luxury. Martin pulled out printed transaction records from a yellow folder. Here's the proof. $5,500 transferred on August 3rd for a personal car installment, $3,200 on August 10th for a smartphone and a smart TV. Which family necessity is that? Daniel panicked. He stepped forward, trying to grab my hand. Dad, yes, we were wrong. We admit it. But this can be solved peacefully, right? We're family. I pulled my hand away. Family doesn't betray family, Daniel. Family doesn't abandon their father at an airport. Family doesn't lie about money. If you still considered yourself my family, you would never have done this. Suddenly, Ethan spoke softly. Grandpa, can we still play at your house? The question stopped me cold. I looked at my grandson's innocent face, his wide eyes filled with hope. I crouched to his level and gently stroked his head. Grandpa loves you, Ethan, and Elisa too. But Grandpa can't accept adults who lie. You can come anytime, just don't bring your mom and dad. Elisa started crying and hugged me tightly. Grandpa, are you mad at Daddy? Why? I couldn't answer. My throat tightened. I just held her silently, letting her tears soak into my shirt. Daniel pulled Elisa away from me. Enough, Elisa. We're going home. Grandpa's angry. He looked at me with pure resentment. You think you've won? We won't stay quiet. We'll challenge this will. We have rights, too. I smiled coldly. Go ahead. Your lawyer will tell you there's no chance. This will is legally airtight, executed while I was sound of mind and body, witnessed by an attorney and a physician, and registered nationally. You want to waste money on lawyers? Be my guest. Martin added calmly. I've also prepared a police report regarding misuse of social funds from the local community center that Daniel received last year. Approximately $1,500 meant for public welfare, but deposited into a personal account. If you choose to escalate this legally, we're ready. Daniel silenced. His face turned pale. Rachel stared at her husband in disbelief. Robert Parker quickly pulled Daniel away. Let's go home first. We'll talk about this later. Linda Parker ushered the grandchildren away, her face filled with shame. Before they left, I said one last thing. Remember this, I didn't push you away. You pushed yourself out with your own actions. They walked off, dragging their suitcases with heavy steps. The joy they had when they first exited the arrivals gate was gone, replaced by silence and empty stares. Martin and I walked toward the parking lot. Inside the car, Martin asked me, "Do you regret it?" I looked out the window. I'd regret it if I stayed silent. At least now they know I'm not someone they can step on. On the way home, my phone vibrated. A WhatsApp message from Daniel. Short, threatening. You think you've won? This isn't over. I didn't reply. I stared at the message for a long moment, then locked my phone. The war had just begun, and this time I wouldn't retreat. I didn't kick them out. I simply let them stand on the porch under the scorching afternoon sun, reading my decisions one by one. And when they knocked on the door,
I chose to brew myself a cup of coffee.
"We're still blood," Daniel said. I stopped in front of the door without opening it. Then I turned back to face them. Blood that abandoned their father at an airport. Blood that took money to fund their own vacation. You want to talk about blood now? Rachel started crying again. "Dad, we truly regret it. We were wrong back then. We thought you'd be exhausted if you came along. That's why we didn't invite you. But we never meant any harm. Truly." I let out a bitter laugh. No bad intentions? Then why was it a carefully prepared plan? 6 tickets booked 2 months before I transferred the money. And you call that no bad intention? Linda Parker tried to speak gently. "Henry, as someone older here, I beg you, this is a family matter. Don't let it turn into a long conflict. The grandchildren will keep asking why they can't come to Grandpa's house anymore." I looked at her flatly. "The children can come anytime, but the adults, those who know right from wrong, those who dared to lie and steal, are not welcome." Daniel started losing his patience. His voice rose slightly. "Dad, we came here peacefully. We apologized. What do you want from us? Do you want us to kneel, cry, and beg for forgiveness?" I replied calmly. "I don't need kneeling. I don't need tears. I just want you to understand one thing. Every action has consequences. You stepped on my dignity. Now you feel what it's like to lose." I went inside and took a folder from the living room table. Then I stepped back out and handed it to Daniel. "Read this. Everything is there." Inside were the legally binding will, records of his bank transactions, screenshots of family conversations belittling me, even video footage from the hidden camera in the wall clock at his house. Daniel's face turned pale. "Dad, you put a camera in our house?" I nodded without guilt. 2 years ago, inside the wall clock I gave you for your birthday. I never used it to spy on you. I just wanted to know whether my grandchildren were happy. Instead, I found recordings of you talking about me like I was garbage." Rachel opened the folder with trembling hands, reading page after page. Tears began falling again when she reached the transcripts of their conversations. She looked at me desperately. "Dad, those were just passing remarks. We didn't really mean it." I stared at her sharply. "Rachel, you told people I had suffered a minor stroke when I was perfectly healthy. You said I was a burden when I never asked for anything from you. That's not passing talk. That's how you truly see me." Linda Parker tried to defend them. "Daniel is a good son, Henry. He just made a mistake. Isn't it too cruel to cut him out of the inheritance over this?" I looked at her with a gaze that silenced her instantly. "Cruelty? Do you know what cruelty is, Linda? Cruelty is when a son deceives his own father. Cruelty is when a daughter-in-law calls her father-in-law a burden. Cruelty is when grandchildren are dragged away without even letting them say goodbye at the airport. That is cruelty." I brought out the last bundle of documents and tossed it at Daniel's feet. "That's a copy of a report filed with the Federal Financial Crimes Unit about the $1,500 in community mosque funds you received last year, money that was never reported or accounted for. Brian Thompson helped me gather the evidence. He was a former investigator with the Federal Anti-Corruption Bureau. He said, this is more than enough to get you into serious legal trouble." Daniel bent down and picked up the documents with shaking hands. He skimmed them quickly, then looked at me with watery eyes. "Dad, this could mean prison." I nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I said, if you can't accept my decision as a father, you'll have to accept my decision as a law-abiding citizen." Suddenly, Rachel shouted sharply, "We know your secrets too. If you keep pushing us, we can expose everything." I looked at her coldly. "What secrets, Rachel? Go ahead, expose them. I've lived as a clean retiree. I never took bribes. I never cheated on my wife. I never left unpaid debts. What exactly do you want to expose? If it's slander, I'll face you in court." Rachel fell silent. She couldn't answer because there was nothing to reveal. Daniel finally collapsed onto the porch steps, his hands covering his face. He cried, the cry of an adult who had completely run out of options. "Dad, we were really wrong. We don't know what else to say. But please don't let it end like this. We need you. The kids need you." I looked at him long. Then I spoke quietly, firmly. "Daniel, you don't need me. You need my money, and that money is no longer yours." I went inside and locked the door from within. I could still hear their voices outside, Rachel crying, Linda trying to calm her, but I didn't care anymore. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the stove, and brewed coffee. The strong aroma of black coffee filled the air. I sat at the dining table, sipping it slowly. They were still on the porch, but I no longer heard their words. Half an hour later, I heard a car drive away. I peeked through the window. They were gone. Only the bags of cakes and souvenirs remained by the gate. I picked them up and handed them to my neighbor who was sweeping her yard. "Please, take these. Enjoy." She accepted them with confusion, but thanked me. 2 days later, I received a WhatsApp voice note from Rachel. Her voice sounded tired, but there was a subtle threat beneath it. "Dad, we tried being nice, but if you keep being stubborn, we can play hard too. We know you have weaknesses. Don't make us expose everything." I listened to the voice note twice. Then I called Brian Thompson. "Brian, there's another threat, this time from Rachel. She says they have something on me." Brian replied calmly, "Henry, relax. I've checked your entire record, clean across the board. They're bluffing, but keep all threats documented just in case they decide to get dirty." I followed his advice. I screenshotted every threatening message, recorded every voice note, and stored them in a dedicated folder. I even backed them up to email and cloud storage. If they dared to attack, I was ready with my own weapons. The next week, Martin Cole called me. "Henry, Daniel tried to find lawyers to challenge your will. 3 attorneys turned him down. They all said the same thing. The will is airtight, no loopholes. One attorney even told him he'd only be wasting time and money." I smiled. Good. Let him know I wasn't bluffing. But the battle wasn't over. One night, around 10 p.m., I heard loud knocking on the door. I looked through the window. Daniel stood outside, alone, his face a mess, his hair unkempt, his clothes wrinkled. He kept knocking, his voice rising. "Dad, open the door. We need to talk." I didn't open it. I just stood behind the door, listening. He kept knocking, his voice rising. "Dad, I'm your son. How can you do this to me?" Neighbors began stepping out of their houses. I knew it was embarrassing, but I still didn't open the door. After 15 minutes, Daniel stopped. He sat down in front of the door, his back leaning against the metal gate. I could hear him sobbing, crying like a child. "Dad, please forgive me. I was really wrong." I stayed silent. I sat on the living room couch, staring at the closed door. My heart hurt, but I would not open it. Not for someone who had betrayed me again and again. Half an hour later, Daniel left. I heard his footsteps fade, followed by the sound of a motorcycle starting. I walked to the door and opened it slightly. The street was empty, only the cold night wind and dim streetlights. I closed the door again, locked it tightly, and went to my bedroom. On the nightstand was a photo of Margaret Williams, smiling gently. I picked it up and hugged it tightly. "Margaret, I did my best. I hope you're proud of me." Tears fell onto the photo frame, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. Relief that I had finally stood up for myself.
They thought revenge required shouting and anger. Sometimes, the most painful thing is when someone no longer cares, not even enough to hate. A month passed from the night Daniel cried at my door. My life settled into a new rhythm, calm, peaceful, meaningful. Every dawn, I woke up early and attended morning prayers at the small community prayer hall near my house, along with longtime neighbors. No one asked about my family. They greeted me warmly, chatted lightly, sometimes shared pastries or fruit from their gardens. During the day, I sat on the back porch reading scripture. The cool Berkeley air soothed my heart. I also began keeping a personal journal, recording my days, my feelings, the lessons I learned. Margaret used to say, "Henry, you need to write things down. One day they'll become precious memories." Now I understood. At night, I attended
Not for people who don't know how to be grateful, but for children who truly need it. One of them was a boy named Ricky, 10 years old. He walked up to me shyly, holding a drawing in both hands. "Grandpa," he said softly, "this is my dream house. When I grow up, I want to be an architect. I want to build homes for poor people like me." I accepted the drawing with a heart that suddenly felt heavy and warm at the same time. It was a simple house, with a small flower garden in front, drawn with dull, worn-out colored pencils, but filled with hope and effort. "You can do it, Ricky," I said, gently patting his head. "I'll be praying for you." Before I left, the children sang a song for me. It was the melody of "Thank You, My Teacher," but they had changed the lyrics into "Thank You, Grandpa." Their voices were cheerful, imperfect, sometimes off-key, yet it was the most beautiful sound I had heard in a long time. My eyes stung with tears, but I held them back. I didn't want them to see me cry. On the drive home, I felt something shift inside my chest. Losing Daniel and his family was painful, but finding a new meaning in life made me feel alive again. I no longer had grandchildren waiting for me at home, but I now had dozens of children who called me Grandpa. The following week, I received an invitation from California Institute of Technology. The Margaret Williams Engineering Scholarship Program had officially launched. 3 first-year civil engineering students were awarded full scholarships from the funds I had allocated. I attended the scholarship ceremony on campus. The 3 students stood before me, smiling brightly. They came from underprivileged families but had exceptional academic records. One of them, Dylan, shared his story. "My father is a construction worker," he said. "He always dreamed of having a child who would become an engineer. Sir, because of this scholarship, my father's dream has come true. I promise I'll study seriously and one day help others the way you've helped me." I shook Dylan's hand. His grip was firm, full of determination. In his eyes, I saw a reflection of my younger self, the passion to build, to contribute, to never give up. After the ceremony, I walked around the Caltech campus. This was the place where I studied decades ago. The buildings had changed, but the atmosphere remained the same, alive with young people who believed they could change the world. I sat on a bench watching students pass by. Memories flooded back. Margaret used to pick me up from this campus. We'd walk toward Berkeley, eat cheap street food, and talk about the future. A future that had now become the past. That afternoon, I visited Alma Grace Senior Living, the retirement home that would later receive my pension funds. Mr. Harold Jensen welcomed me warmly. "Mr. Williams, we're truly grateful. Your donation will greatly improve our healthcare facilities and the quality of meals for our residents." He gave me a tour. There were about 25 seniors living there. Some were very old. Some used wheelchairs. Some lay quietly in their beds. But when they saw me, they smiled. "Who's this?" one elderly woman asked softly. "A new guest?" Mr. Jensen replied, This is Mr. Henry Williams, one of our donors. I spoke with several residents. One of them, Mr. Carl, 83, shared his story. I was an elementary school teacher. I never had children. My baby passed away shortly after birth. My wife followed 10 years later. Now I'm alone. Thank God for this place. Otherwise, I don't know where I'd be. His words stayed with me. I wasn't alone. There were many people far lonelier than I was. Before I left, Mr. Jensen asked gently, "Mr. Williams, have you ever considered living here someday? We'd be honored." I smiled. Maybe one day, but for now I still want to live in my own home. There are still things I need to settle. On my way home, I passed a street I used to walk with Daniel when he was little. The road leading to the city park, where we used to fly kites together. I stopped and looked at the park from afar. Memories resurfaced. A young Daniel running, laughing, shouting, "Dad, look, the kite is flying so high." That child was gone. What remained was an adult who felt like a stranger to me. Suddenly, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" A gentle female voice replied. "Mr. Williams, this is Sarah, Daniel's neighbor. I'm sorry to bother you. I got his number from the neighborhood association. I just wanted to let you know, Daniel seems to be in serious trouble. His car was repossessed yesterday. Rachel looks extremely stressed. Alyssa and Noah cry often. They keep saying they want to see their grandpa." My heart softened slightly at the mention of my grandchildren, but my voice remained flat. "Thank you for the information, Sarah. But why are you telling me this?" She hesitated. "I just feel sorry for them. They're your family. Maybe you could help." I paused before answering. "I appreciate your concern, but their problems are no longer my responsibility. They're adults. They must take responsibility for their choices." I ended the call. I sat on my porch for a long time. Part of me still cared. Another part said, "They started this. Let them finish it." I chose to do nothing. A few days later, on a bright afternoon, I heard a soft knock at the gate. I looked out and saw Robert Parker standing outside with Alyssa and Noah. My grandchildren looked exhausted. Their eyes were swollen, as if they'd been crying. My heart sank instantly. I stepped outside, but stayed behind the locked iron gate. "Grandpa," Noah whispered, his voice trembling. Alyssa just stared at me, tears pooling in her eyes. Robert spoke, his voice pleading. "Henry, please, not for Daniel or Rachel, but for the children. They miss you. They don't understand why they're not allowed to see you anymore." I crouched down to their level through the bars. "Alyssa, Noah, Grandpa loves you, but Grandpa can't accept adults who lie to him. Do you understand?" Alyssa asked shakily. "Then why are you mad at Daddy? Daddy said, 'Grandpa is mean.'" The words pierced my chest. Daniel had taught his children to resent me. I took a deep breath. "One day you'll understand. Grandpa isn't mean. Grandpa is just protecting himself from people who don't respect him." I brought out 2 storybooks I had prepared. "These are for you. Read them well. You can come play here any time. Just don't bring adults who betrayed Grandpa." Alyssa accepted the books with trembling hands. Noah asked innocently, "Grandpa, do you still love Daddy?" I stayed silent for a long moment. Then I answered honestly, "I love the person he used to be, but that person is gone. The man he is now is not the son I knew." Noah didn't understand, but one day he would. Robert led the children away. They turned back several times, waving. I waved back, then went inside. I sat on the couch, hugged a pillow, and finally cried. I cried for a loss I couldn't prevent, for grandchildren forced to carry the weight of a broken family.
That night, I gathered all the evidence I had collected. Documents, recordings, screenshots. I took them to the backyard. I lit a fire in the small metal barrel I used for burning rash. One by one, I burned them. The flames consumed pages filled with betrayal and lies. I no longer needed proof. I had already won. Not loudly, but quietly. After everything turned to ash, I sat under the star-filled sky. I wrote a final letter to myself. I didn't lose a son. They lost a father. I've done my part, Margaret. They can't erase us from this family's history, but they've erased themselves from our hearts. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. I stored it in my desk drawer, beside Margaret's photograph. I stood before her portrait and smiled. Love, I've done my best. I don't hate them. I simply don't care anymore. And that's far more peaceful than hatred. The evening call to prayer echoed softly from a nearby chapel. I washed, prayed, and sat in quiet reflection. My heart was calm. No anger, no resentment, only peace at last. I closed the front door gently. The sound felt final, like closing a chapter of my life. A chapter filled with betrayal, but also lessons. Outside, Berkeley grew dark. House lights turned on one by one. Life moved forward. And I, Henry Williams, a 68-year-old retired engineer, would move forward too. Without them, with a lighter heart,